this portion of the show, we want to talk about energy. And we have one of the true gems at the University of North Dakota and the state of North Dakota in the Energy and Environmental Research Center. We have the director, Tom Erickson, here. Tom, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Tell us a little bit about the EERC.
So the EERC is an applied research organization focused on solving energy challenges, certainly here in the state of North Dakota, but even broader than that throughout North America and throughout the world. Challenges related to creating more energy efficient technologies, more cost-effective technologies, and technologies that protect the environment that we all cherish so much.
So at UND, we talk a lot now about oil and soil being so important to the state, but it's more than just oil in terms of energy and the work that you do.
It certainly is. Certainly coal is a big component of the energy mix of the state of North Dakota and of our research, but as well wind, a little bit of solar, and then a whole suite of other renewables such as ethanol, biodiesel, biomass, and things of that nature.
It's great work that you do, and we also are, of course, very pleased here to have our College of Engineering and Mines, and I know you work closely together on a number of these kinds of areas.
Yeah, there's a tremendous breadth of capabilities in the area of energy research across the University of North Dakota. Certainly on the science and technology side, we have the two cornerstones, the EERC and the College of Engineering and Mines, led by a number of programs there, including their petroleum engineering program and their Institute for Energy Studies. But even beyond the core science and technology, we have the ability to address legal and policy issues, various economic issues, social aspects, criminal justice. We've recently went through an exercise here where we've identified 12 different funding opportunities outside of our core areas of strength. And they include folks across the law field, the sociology, the criminal justice, the entrepreneurial side, and many other areas, and how they all can contribute to the energy sector and the energy research activities as well.
So between the ERC and the College of Engineering and Mines and the core library, which we don't own, but we're very happy to house here, the Geological Survey, Wilson Laird Core Library, I can't imagine this state being so engaged in the energy industry, particularly what's happening in oil, and not have these opportunities here at the University of North Dakota to help out.
Yeah, when you mentioned the core library here, I mean, that is such a tremendous asset, not only to the industry that wants to operate within the state of North Dakota or the researchers that want to do research, but also the ability for the students to have hands-on learning and understanding of what is truly going on when we're talking about recovering oil by drilling a well 2 miles down and then another lateral well 2 miles out. Kind of hard to visualize that without being able to put your hands on samples.
Tom, would you be able to explain what a core is or what's in the core library?
Certainly. So when you drill a well, be it for oil, certain other applications as well across the state, you take a section of the rock and you extract that when you're drilling the well. So you pull that core up. So you literally have a cylindrical piece of rock that is from the exact area you're either drilling through or exploring for oil in, and it allows you to pull it up and then actually see what it physically looks like, what the characteristics, what the porosity, the permeability, what the organic content of it is, the oil-bearing portion of it, and in other cases, what we can look at in terms of carbon storage. A big topic right now is how do we deal with the CO2 from, especially from coal-fired combustion. And we have this tremendous resource and asset in the state of North Dakota of these reservoirs, be it oil-bearing or aquifers or whatever, that we can put that CO2 into.
How many cores do we have in that library?
That I don't know. A lot.
Okay.
so many.
A lot of them.
A lot you can't count.
Yeah, so many that we've obviously needed to add on significantly. And it's a resource that not many states have. When North Dakota did it, and much of the oil activity that was developed, especially in the western part of the state with the earlier plays in the 70s and such, we were able to learn from many other states and actually grab those cores and build this core library up. So we have certainly one of the most complete core libraries across the United States.
So I'm a book lover, and I think of it in terms of books. If you want to find something in the book, you look in the index, and I think of the core library as sort of the index for the state in terms of the the geology of the state, and this tells you where things are at and what's in there. It's a remarkable facility, and we're just really pleased to have it here at the University of North Dakota. We've been talking a lot today about the grand challenges that we saved for the last, the Energy Grand Challenge. That's your champion. Can you help us talk about that?
Yeah, so you've all heard about the Grand Challenge, this focus of enhancing the overall research. And in my mind, what the Grand Challenges are really doing is they're enhancing our ability to serve the state of North Dakota. We talk about producing great students, but we also produce world-renowned research that allows us to do things better, more efficient, with a lower environmental footprint, which also, of course, generates additional revenue, which and provides additional jobs for the people of North Dakota and serves North Dakota as a whole. So when we talk about research, in my mind, we're always bringing it back to we're ultimately serving the state of North Dakota with the research. And energy, like the other 4 grand challenges, is an opportunity for us to look at these different aspects of coal utilization, of capturing the CO2 and putting it into the ground, utilizing CO2 from coal-fired combustion systems to enhance the amount of oil we recover. How do we make ethanol even greener is another project we're working on right now with the Red Trail Energy Facility. How can we take the actual CO2 from an ethanol facility, inject that into the ground, and actually have greener ethanol, which will hopefully garner a credit on the market and increase the overall value of it.
So from an environmental standpoint, it's important to pay attention to those CO2 emissions, but there's, for the energy industry, there's additional reasons.
Yeah, it's a great point, Peter. The state of North Dakota, I would mention the oil exploration that occurred and development that occurred back in the 70s during that peak. We're at a point right now where to exploit those energy resources, that oil and gas more, we actually need to go to what's called tertiary oil recovery, utilizing CO2 to actually recover more oil from the ground. Right now, we do not have a source of CO2 to do that. And so by pairing the opportunity of removing the CO2 emissions from a coal-fired power plant, using that to enhance oil recovery, and at the end of the day, 100% of those CO2 emissions stay underground. So we're removing the CO2 from going into the atmosphere and producing more oil in the same process, and actually technically cheaper oil in the process.
So it's a win-win, really.
It certainly is. There are very few states that are set up like North Dakota with this tremendous opportunity that we have here. Maybe Texas would be one similar to us. And now is our opportunity to take advantage of it. Certainly, Great Plains Gasification has been doing this for years. They've been capturing the CO2 from their gasification facility, sending it north in a pipeline approximately 210 miles long up into Canada, and which it is used for enhanced oil recovery in Canada.
So there are a lot of factors that come into play about what point it's economic to do more oil extraction, but any sense where we're sitting at now?
Well, there's 2 different sides to oil. Of course, we have the traditional plays that have been around for quite some time, and then we have the Bakken activities. And certainly the traditional plays are those plays which were at least initially targeting for enhanced oil recovery for extracting more of the oil than we could under typical recovery. The Bakken's a little bit more of an unknown as we go forward. We still believe that we are only recovering with traditional methods somewhere between 6 and 10% of that resource, and looking at ways through just innovative processes that we can increase the recovery of the Bakken resources.
So my recollection is it's a thin layer. It's almost as if you took a glass and you poured it out on this table and it just spreads out. That's sort of the Bakken, right? It's a thin. It's a lot there, but it's spread out in a thin way.
It is spread out. There's also many layers of it. There's what we could term the upper Bakken and the lower Bakken, and there's the area in the middle, which is where we're actually typically recovering most of the oil from, is in the middle. But then we have the Three Forks and other regions as well. So it's not. It's a very good point you make. It's not like there's one big reservoir or bowl of oil sitting down there that we're trying to tap. It's many thin layers.
Which was sort of my initial concept when people were talking about, it's like you're just tapping into the ocean, right? Well, not quite.
I've seen a couple of these cores that Thomas showed me, and I wouldn't have thought there'd be any way you could get oil out of it. It's basically rock. It's very, very dense.
Yeah, I'm a chemical engineer by training, not a geologist. So when somebody first showed me a core, again, a core from 2 miles down, and I said, you got to be kidding me. We're not getting oil out of that. And that is what we truly are. I mean, the amount of innovation that has gone into making that possible is incredible.
It absolutely is, the technology, the innovation. So we're talking about oil, but what about coal? Where are we at with coal?
So certainly coal has had a long legacy in the state of North Dakota and has the potential to have a much longer legacy. Tremendous coal resources here. Many times quoted as under the current rate of consumption, we have about 800 years of coal that we know is there and easily recoverable. But coal, of course, faces a lot of challenges, and one of those is CO2. And so we're looking a lot at how do we take existing coal-fired facilities and retrofit them or modify the back end to grab that CO2. One such project that's being proposed in western part of North Dakota is called Project Tundra. And it's to take a technology that's been demonstrated at a smaller scale down in Texas, scale it up a little bit larger, put it on a lignite facility, which always brings forward some extra challenges, and actually capture that CO2.
So we're talking about energy and how that benefits North Dakota, and that includes educating students who go out and work in the energy field, and we've got graduating graduate students today, Grant.
Yeah, that's right. One of my pleasures of being at UND is I also get to be the dean of the graduate school and help preside over the graduation ceremony for our PhD and master's students. I think I might have mentioned earlier that research is really driven by the efforts and the hard work of graduate students, and this is kind of their day. We're going to be having PhD graduates walk across the stage and get their hood, and master's students come across, get their diplomas, and as you said, these students are working in a lot of areas, including in the energy area. And I think that, Tom, you could probably talk a lot about the students that you've worked with over the years in the ERC.
Yeah, I've always been very passionate about involving students in research, when we can, when appropriate. And one of the reasons I have that passion is back when I was a student, I was included in research, and I actually, back in 1986, walked into the ERC and got my first student job working there, and have believed in and supported student involvement since that day.
So 1986, we were talking about more of the traditional types of energy, but nowadays, it's more than that.
It is. One of the things we're talking about the coal industry. We're really focused right now as well on what does the coal facility of the future look like, and certainly engaged with many utilities around the United States and especially in North Dakota here. And one of the technologies that we've been spending a significant amount of attention on is called the alum cycle. And the alum cycle is a way in which we can combust CO2 or gasify CO2 in this case, take the gas that's produced and use it to turn a turbine. But what we're essentially using is the CO2 to turn a turbine. And we can end up with a higher efficiency system and a relatively pure CO2 stream that we can then use for enhanced oil recovery or sequester into the ground. And it's actually a win-win because it helps us deal with some of these critical environmental issues, but at the same time creates a much more efficient power plant and helps us to keep electricity prices down.
That's hugely important for all of us going forward. So as we talked about, oil and actually energy is so huge in this state, so important to the economy of the state. And there's nothing's going to change that in the near future,
No, you're exactly right. That renewables have a great opportunity in the future. Solar, wind, geothermal, another great opportunity. One of the things that we're challenged with is how do we store that for times when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. And if we can come up with a cost-effective energy storage technology, that could change the way we look at energy not only across North Dakota but across the world.
How about hydrogen? How does hydrogen fit into the mix anymore?
Well, hydrogen is a great one because it is one way of actually storing energy. We can use it to help buffer things like when you have excess wind energy, you can use it to actually produce hydrogen, and then you can use that hydrogen to produce energy when the wind's not blowing. So that's one thing that hydrogen looks at. But there's been a significant focus, 15 years ago on looking at a hydrogen economy and using hydrogen for a fuel for vehicles. That's gone up and down. There are countries around the world, Japan and Germany, probably leading the charge right now at going back to looking at hydrogen as a fuel. It has some challenges in terms of how you even can store the hydrogen and put it on a vehicle and get long enough range. But a hydrogen vehicle is really no different than an electric vehicle. The only difference is rather than have a battery pack, an electric vehicle, you have a fuel cell, and your hydrogen is your battery as it runs through this fuel cell to produce the electricity. Virtually everything else between an electric vehicle and a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle are the same.
Huh. We were talking earlier about unmanned aircraft systems, and it strikes me that in the energy industry, and we've talked about this already, using UASs to go across the transmission lines, and seems to me there's all kinds of applications there.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are endless, and one of the things that we're focused on too in the oil and gas industry is decreasing leaks. Certainly they get a significant amount of attention. Nobody wants to see them. We want to stop them before they happen to start with. But UAS technology is potentially one way that we can identify them more rapidly when they do occur and get that situation rectified and mitigated as quickly as possible.
You mentioned wind power. I've got to believe sending a UAS up, I don't know how tall those things are. They're tall. I've climbed up one before. It's a long way up.
Well, you're a lot braver than me, because I don't think I would be willing to climb up one. That the heights are not my friend. But certainly they are exploring that right now. UAS systems that can basically go vertically up, take a look at the entire head up there, and then come back down and report situation, and then move on from tower to tower.
Tom, thanks for being on the show.